G'day. Welcome. So you're one of the many Brits who now calls Australia home. That's fantastic. But you've probably got that one big question nagging at you. What about my UK pension? How do I get my hard-earned money over here, down under? Well, today we're going to explain exactly how that whole journey works.
You've made the big move, you're soaking up the Aussie lifestyle, but there's a pretty important piece of your financial puzzle still sitting all the way back in the UK. If you've been wondering, how do I bring it home? Trust me, you are definitely not alone. So let's dive in and unpack the official way to do it.
Now you might think, can I just transfer it like I would with a normal bank account? And honestly, I wish it were that simple, but it's not. The UK government has a really specific set of rules, and this creates something we call the QROPS compliance hurdle, and it's the very first thing you've got to get your head around.
To really get why it's so tricky now, we need a quick trip back in time. You see, before 2015, things were pretty easy. Your standard Aussie super fund could probably just accept a UK pension transfer. No dramas. But then, on April 6, 2015, everything changed. The UK government brought in new rules, and almost overnight, most Australian super funds just fell right off the approved list.
So what was the big deal? What changed? Well, this slide gets right to the heart of it. It all comes down to the access age. In the UK, the rule is ironclad. You cannot touch your pension money before you're 55, full stop. But here in Australia, our super laws allow for early access in some really specific situations, like severe financial hardship. And that one difference, that fundamental conflict, is what makes most regular Aussie funds a no-go in the eyes of the UK government.
So this leads us to the single most important rule in this entire process. Seriously, if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it the number we're about to show you.
55. That's it. That's the magic number. It is the absolute minimum age you must be before you can even think about starting the process of moving your UK pension funds into a compliant Aussie fund.
And this really drives the point home. It's not just about you. If you're planning to use a self-managed super fund, which is common for this, every single member of that fund has to be 55 or older. No ifs, no buts. There are absolutely no exceptions here. It is a hard and fast rule from the UK.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem. We know the strict age rule. So what on earth is the solution? Well, to get your money here, you can't just use any old fund. You actually have to build a very special, compliant one.
And the solution has a name, QROPS. It stands for Qualifying Recognized Overseas Pension Scheme. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like a special passport for your pension. A fund has to tick all these boxes and meet this strict set of UK rules to get that QROPS stamp of approval. And that stamp is what lets it receive your money without you getting hit with massive tax penalties.
So how do you get one?
Well, the pathway is through a purpose-built self-managed super fund or SMSF. But, and this is crucial, it's not your standard off-the-shelf SMSF. It has to be specifically designed with a legal document, a trust deed, that has been written from the ground up to meet every single one of those UK requirements.
And here are the three non-negotiables for that trust deed. First, it has to legally block any access to the money before preservation age. Second, it has to explicitly forbid any early release for financial hardship, to solve that core conflict we talked about. And third, it needs special custom clauses that line up with UK rules about taking out lump sums. It's all about making the Aussie fund act just like a UK pension.
All right, so let's imagine you've done it all. You're over 55, you've set up this special compliant SMSFT, and the money has finally landed in your Australian account. So what happens next? How do you actually manage that money?
Okay, a few key things to know. Once it's here, your UK money is always tracked separately. It'll show up as a QROPS balance on your statement. The transfer is also treated as a non-concessional contribution, which is basically after-tax money. So you do need to keep an eye on Australia's contribution caps. But the really good news? Because you used a compliant fund, there's no extra UK tax to worry about on the transfer. And then, once you're officially retired and meet the preservation age, you can start a pension with it, just like the rest of your super.
As you've probably figured out by now, this isn't exactly a simple weekend project you can do yourself. The rules are complex, the stakes are really high, and, getting it wrong can be incredibly costly. Which brings us to the most important takeaway of all.
So look, we have to put up this standard but really crucial disclaimer. Everything we've talked about today is general information. Think of it like a map of the territory, but that map doesn't know your personal starting point or where you're trying to get to. Everyone's situation, how big your pension is, your exact age, what other assets you have, it's all completely unique.
And that leads us to the final and most important question. What does all of this mean for you, for your specific circumstances? Is this even the right strategy for you? And if it is, when should you do it? Well, to answer those questions, you need to go from general information to specific, personal advice. The only right next step is to speak with a qualified professional who lives and breathes this stuff. To really explore what this could look like for you, the next step is to call Sean Sullivan on 0413 892 531. Just so you know, Sean is an authorised representative of Vivid Financial Planning Pty Ltd, and they hold the Australian Financial Services Licence number 478937. Thanks so much for tuning in.